Hello, and thank you for joining us today. I'd like to welcome everyone to Moxie's 30-minute webinar, Tactics to Extend Your Campaign Reach and Performance. I have a few items to cover, and then we will get started. During this webinar, all lines will be muted to provide better sound quality for participants. We are recording the entire event, and the recording and related materials will be distributed to all attendees via email tomorrow. We have reserved some time for Q&A at the end of the session. You can enter your questions in the WebEx chat panel at any time during the event. You should already see some entries there under the tag Moxie Events. Once you've entered your questions, I will queue them up for our presenters to answer at the conclusion of today's presentation. Now let's get started. Today's speakers are Michelle Tressimer, Digital Marketing Strategist at Tressimer Group, and Brian Strauss, VP of Field Engineering at Moxie. Michelle, let's turn it over to you for a campaign discussion.
Thanks, Gillian. So first, let's talk about knowing your visitor and what that means from a very practical campaign planning perspective. Our strategy at its core is very, very simple. We want to take what you've already done for your ad campaigns and use what you know about your visitors to engage with them further down the funnel. So first, attract. Your ad or promotional channel attracted someone to engage with it. It was a good message, it resonated with your audience, and you're rewarded with some kind of engagement, usually a click or conversion. Next, and this is usually the missing piece, extending that message. Whatever drove that person to engage with your company in the first place needs to be nurtured along the entire journey with the same tone and imagery that inspired that very first click. So no more jarring disconnects between the ad and the rest of that user experience. And finally, you got to make sure you personalize. We know a lot about the visitor based on the ad campaign. Let's use that information to tailor the experience from beginning to end. Now, typically, you have all these messages and ads and programs driving traffic to the site, which you can see represented on the left. Each of these is painstakingly tailored to the target audience for that channel. The specialists on the left know those audience segments inside and out. They're the experts. But usually their realm of interest ends when the visitor hits that landing page. So basically that finely tuned and tested campaign experience tends to stop way too early. After all that campaign work, why would you stop that segmentation at the door? But sadly, that's usually what happens, and you end up with a pretty vanilla user experience, which you can see here on the right. So what should that look like? We recommend this approach. In this example, the Facebook ad messaging is integrated throughout the site for this audience segment. No more disconnect, no more vanilla experience. When you approach your campaign this way, you use that knowledge and insight from the paid specialist to continually engage with your audience, not just once on the ad click, but throughout that entire brand experience. So that sounds really good in concept, but what it looks like tactically is with something we call message matching. And a quick tip about consistency, we could probably do an entire presentation about the psychology of commitment and consistency. But for now, I just want to highlight that our brains are wired to like consistency, and inconsistency can cause doubt and your cart gets abandoned. The key to get prospects is to get prospects and customers involved and keep them involved every step of the way. So the easiest way to do this is through matching the message. And for anyone on the call familiar with these campaigns, we all know it saves you a lot of money in your landing page. And I'm talking about Google and Facebook quality and relevancy scores. There's a reason for this. Google and Facebook want to make sure your advertising is relevant to the end user, which keeps the platform quality really high. We use this same logic, and we recommend following that message and tone all the way to the end of the customer journey. If you speak to your audience like real people in your ad campaign, make sure you continue that tone on your site beyond that immediate landing page. You're literally bringing the message that inspired that first click deeper into your site to pull that user forward. So let's look at an example of what message matching may look like. In this example, we're running a kids winter coat campaign. So we're using Facebook ads, and we are targeting moms in New York and dads in Minnesota. We noticed early in this campaign that we didn't have a lot of sales on that first visit, but these groups were returning within 30 days to browse the site again. So the first visitor, Jane Doe, could be a direct visitor. Don't have a lot of information on her other than she's visited the site at some point in the last 30 days and viewed a kid's coat page. Samantha and Simon, however, did click on the Facebook ad campaign. And because of our targeting efforts, we know a lot about them. Most importantly, we know their age, their gender, and that they have elementary school-aged kids. So both Simon and Samantha clicked on the campaign for a kid's winter jacket. And given their gender and demographic makeup, we can message them individually so the website experience matches the ad they originally engaged with. Basically, we're making their entire experience consistent. So first, we wanted to create a generic message for any returning visitor that viewed the Kids Coats pages. So this is Jane. And since she's a direct visitor, we don't know a lot about her, but for comparison, we want to test the effect of a simple welcome message as a baseline. So for Jane, it's very, very basic, but we know she's returned, so we can at least say welcome back. Samantha, however, we know a lot about because we already specifically targeted her with an ad on Facebook. And keep in mind, we've already segmented the audience this way since we had to do it when we created the ad campaign. So we're just extending it to the welcome message. Very little extra effort is needed. The language and tone was already detailed in the ad planning process. So we're just taking that tone and using it deeper into the site to re-engage with Samantha. Remember, consistency is key. So for Samantha's message, brick is slang in New York apparently for really, really cold. And we're directly mentioning her kids to appeal to her sense of being a good mom with growing kids. We also chose the word jacket instead of coat based on a quick Google Trend search showing that jacket resonates more than coat for New Yorkers. And if you use an image, don't use an image of a chat agent. No one cares what your stock photo agent looks like. Use a picture from your ad campaign to bond with your visitor on that emotional appeal. So a very tailored message for Samantha. And again, for Simon, we know a lot about him because he clicked on our Facebook ad. Not that cold in Minnesota means you're going to freeze your face off in 15 seconds. And for Simon, we chose a very typical dad image of kids in a sled in the backyard. These minor tweaks may seem insignificant, but they speak the language of the visitor, and we're tying it back to the ad that originally sparked their interest enough to click on it. Again, consistency. Even just this one tweak for key campaigns can reduce your bounce rate, pull the customer deeper into your site for engagement, and something like a welcome back message takes only a few minutes extra to set up. And it can increase your brand loyalty, increase those conversions. So it's worth the extra little time as you're building out the rest of your ad campaign. So we've talked a lot on the messaging side, but let's look a little more on the data side to see what this shift looks like. Generally, it looks something like this. You've got a channel specialist. They're analyzing data strictly from a channel perspective. So when you're a hammer, though, all you tend to see is nails. So the goal for this scenario that you see on the slide is maybe just to get as many conversions or sales as possible for paid social. So it's a little broad in scope. We recommend flipping the chart and making the campaign the focus. So now we can quickly compare how the Kids Winter Coat campaign performed across channels and figure out how to adjust budget for the next iteration of the campaign. So in this view, we're no longer a hammer looking at nails, we're an entire toolbox looking for the right tool for this particular campaign. Sometimes it's paid social, sometimes search, maybe email. By viewing it this way, the goal is also really specific. So the goal here is to sell more kids' coats. To reach that goal, we need to adjust the channels to get the best ROI. And everyone has to be on the same page. Every channel specialist needs to be on board with the same goal and be okay not being the star of every campaign with their channel. And that can be tricky. But normally we're not looking at line art. Usually we're looking at spreadsheets, something like this. So here we're looking at channel success. You can see the channel and it gets broken down so you can see how campaigns compared on each network. But when you're planning a campaign, this isn't very useful and would take a lot of time to figure out what's what to help plan out for the next year. So that's why we push the campaign-centered approach for the day-to-day management, which looks a little more like this. So in your day-to-day execution, you want to know how that campaign performs across your networks, not how your networks perform across campaigns. You're going to ask yourself, okay, last year we ran this Winter Kids Coats campaign. Which network had the best performance? Looking at the data by campaign will give you that answer quickly so you can adjust your budget and optimize every time you run that campaign. And surprisingly for us, across the board with our clients, this is a big struggle in getting started with a campaign like this, getting everyone using the right tracking parameters so the data is consistent and clear. It can be really difficult, especially if you have internal and external resources trying to work together or spanning large and very separate departments. UTM parameters can be our best friends or our worst enemies. So again, when you start looking at this from a campaign-centered approach, you start planning your optimizations across your channels and then through the customer journey. This view forces you to ask, for this particular campaign, what mix of networks do we need? How can we welcome and guide these audience segments once they've hit the site using the tools at our disposal? It's a much more holistic approach to campaign planning. So let's talk for a minute about these tools. Thanks to technology, we all know that personalizing that experience is easier than ever before. A couple of quick recommendations. First, audit your Marcom tech stack. These tech companies are constantly expanding their offerings. Many are branching out into new sectors, and a tool you already use and pay for may now be able to accomplish some of this personalization. If it doesn't, where are the holes in functionality you need to fill? Next, audit your skill sets. We always recommend tools that are easy on IT whenever possible. Marketing moves very quickly, and try to get tools that don't require a lot of ongoing tech support or a lot of staff training. And last but not least, finally keep exploring. The big players in Marcom are constantly updating tools and adding functionality. It would be exhausting to follow all of the updates. We usually recommend assigning an entry-level person to monitor, watch webinars, and take demos of at least the big players and report back on what you need to know. So as you look through your toolbox, what tools and people do you have in place to engage with specific target audience through that website experience? We recommend making a list of the basics, things like the welcome back message, so you can quickly come up with ideas when you plan your next campaign. And try to think about, are your tools one-to-one, like an email or a chat, or are they one-to-many, like contextual knowledge snippets, like our welcome message, that can engage the larger segments of visitors and kind of scale with traffic. That last 20% of effort to extend the reach of your campaign can make a huge difference, so please don't quit at the landing page. Take it all the way through. And you can have all the tech tools in the world, but someone has to actually use them, optimize them, and manage them. And if you don't, the tech will end up working you instead of you working the tech. So bottom line, you're already doing 80% of this anyway. You're already segmenting your audience and choosing the right channels and messages. We're just saying pull that insight through the rest of the visitor experience with these targeted engagements. By doing this, you're going to start to layer in new strategies for each campaign, constantly getting better on what you learned from the last one. You'll build a better, more robust strategy and increase the overall health of the campaign and your business. And if all goes according to plan, your boss will pat you on the back and give you a raise. To summarize, what do we know about our audience and how they engage with the ads on the site? And how can you use that information to invite them deeper into your digital journey? It'll feel like a lot of extra steps the first few times you start thinking this way, but once you get in the habit of optimizing through that entire experience, it will become second nature. So let's look at an example of bringing that message deeper into the experience. For this example, we'll assume you've already figured out who you're going to target with what message and on what channel. So you've already planned for the left side of the illustration we walked through earlier. Now let's take the next step and extend that message to the rest of the experience. And I work with Moxie and some of their customers and love this technique. Brian is going to walk us through to extend the campaign.
Brian, can you hear us? Brian? Brian, you might still be muted. Let me see. Sorry, folks, 1 second. It sounds like Brian is trying. He's not muted.
Is this any better?
There we go. Now we can hear you.
Very strange. Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, Brian.
Sorry about that. All right. So I think one of the things that's important is that when it comes to marrying digital marketing to customer engagement, I think it's a little bit of a mind shift. You know, digital marketing is used to planning for and creating campaigns, whereas customer engagement, when I'm talking about on the site, people typically have a sort of a set and forget kind of approach that Michelle alluded to, which is, okay, we've got our chat link there, or we've got our web self-service page. We're done, right? Nothing much more for us to do. And I think the technique that we're talking about here is that, you know, in general, while you want to have solid ways that customers can contact you, you also want to don't leave them alone. So when we have these kind of, campaigns that drive traffic to the site, you don't just want to have the customers left alone and your marketing strategy all of a sudden ceases just because they've gotten to the front door. So as Michelle alluded to, we're going to use, you know, some practical engagement techniques then to carry on the voice of the campaign. So here at Moxie, we've put together this this engagement planner to help you do that. So what we've got here is obviously just some basic things, the root of our, you know, the name of our campaign. We've kind of got who we're going after here from a metrics perspective. It's a paid social campaign. And then just sort of a little high-level microcosm of the engagement itself, which is, okay, so we're going to have a custom landing page here for winter jackets, for kids' winter coats. And then what we're going to do is, you know, make sure that we're sort of echoing the language and the campaign and provide an incentive to keep somebody clicking and keep them engaged, so that our campaign respondees don't just land in front of sort of a digital vending machine where they have to kind of fend for themselves, but we're giving them more information and nudges and support as we go through this experience. Okay, so with that, I'm going to have, we'll show you a little bit of a demo. And I'm going to share.
Great, we see it.
And here we are. Great. So here we are on the custom landing page that I'm going to use. I'm just going to orient you guys a little bit. So I've got a couple things going on here. I've got you know, something like our respondents are going to be clicking in from like a Facebook ad, kind of like this, and then we're going to find them here on our site, and we're using our fictional retail environment called Go Retail. And so then what I'm going to go ahead and do is I want to make sure that when people are clicking through from that environment, then that they get the right engagement that kind of echoes the campaign. So I'm going to go ahead and log into, I'm sure I'm logged out here, but I'm going to log into my concierge tenant, and I'm going to go down to, I've done a little bit of the pre-work for me. I'm going to start working within this engagement. And so what I've done here is I've given this a name, right, pretty simple. I've decided that I'm going to proactively reach out to visitors. I've got my specific text. And remember, again, we're going to echo the same language that we've had in our digital campaign that Michelle alluded to, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to make sure we can schedule it. Just like additional digital campaigns, we can set these up ahead of time so that customers are engaged during the time period that we want. Now, in our fictional world, that's in 2019 or in January 1, 2019, but for the purpose of this demo today, I've made sure that I'm going to have it run here on November 6th, that it works. I'm going to enable my engagement, and then we're going to make sure that this fires to the right people and the right people only. So we have some criteria that we can use for that, like a portion of the URL. So if I pop back over to my my campaign landing page, I've got my kids' coats here. But I want to do is take a quick look and examine the URL. So certainly we've got the domain here, and we've got the kids' landing page. But when folks click through, as Michelle alluded to, right, there's going to be a bunch of reference information here, query string parameters that are passed through that identify the campaign and identify the segment of the people clicking through. And so there's a few different things. You know, you got your cost per click there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the UTM campaign kids Coat 19 piece of that, because that says these are the people that definitely are coming through for this portion of the campaign. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to come over to my engagement here, and I'm going to paste in. So basically, anyone that's got this specific part in the link that they click through and they land on the page, if this little bit is in there, then they ought to fire it. So I'm going to go ahead and update the rule. And I'm going to go ahead and refresh the page as if I'm clicking through, and we ought to automatically see right off the bat that welcome. So the flow will be then, right, is that someone clicks through, we're able to then say, hey, remember us from the campaign. We're serious about that, making sure that you feel special and taken care of. And oftentimes what you're looking at here is bounce rate is a huge thing, right? Regardless of what other channel you drive somebody in from, whether it's email, whether it's social, oftentimes they land on this page and 60 to 70% of the traffic just goes away, vaporizes at this point. So you're always looking at some other way just to give them one more excuse to click another page, and then one more excuse to nudge them into another page. And so knowing where they are in the journey and what you can add to the experience is important to keep them clicking. So at this point, it's just echoing that campaign, letting them know that you're there and that you're providing them an incentive to go forward. So that's it. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. And Gillian, take it away.
Absolutely. Let me switch back to our slide deck. Okay, while we switch to see the slides with the information, there we go. Okay, you can ask questions through the WebEx chat panel or the Q&A panel. Any way you ask them, I will see them there. I do have a few already queued up, so I'll jump into those, but did want to let you know either the Q&A panel, I've seen some in there, and in the chat panel, both of those are welcome. I did have a few questions on one item that I wanted to cover off. We are recording the event, and the recording and slides that have been shown here will be sent out to everyone on this call tomorrow morning. So that covers a few of those. Now let's jump in. Brian, for you, on the Moxie solution, how does that scale? We referenced one campaign here. This person, Rebecca, says, I have 200 like that running for my retail group. How does this scale to address all those different campaigns that I might have running?
Sure. So there's a couple of different tricks that you can do to make these kind of campaigns sort of instantly scalable. And I'd be happy to, or anybody else from Moxie would be happy to give you a demo on this. But effectively what we can do is, let's say you're running 100 pay-per-click campaigns. You could do a couple of things. So one is we could have a couple of different triggers that are dynamic. So one would be just building off of the URL information that I showed. Maybe we wouldn't choose the specific campaign in that case. Maybe we would just take a portion of that URL and just look at the part that's coming in, that's identifying it as a Facebook campaign. Then what we could do is, for the specific page that we're on, we could, depending on the specific, header or the category or even the product name, we can use our engagement mapper technology to automatically reference that page or that category in the approach, in that invitation to engage. So we can dynamically have it pull in the sector or the product category and to target those individuals. So you can, basically what I'm saying is, you can, with one rule, you can set up an approach that will work for an undeterminate number of campaigns.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Perfect. Michelle, this one came in for you early on. You were on a slide that talked about UTM parameters, and they can be your best asset or your worst nightmare. I'm not sure if that's the word you used, but that was my takeaway on what you said. Any tactics to get everyone using the same tracking? This particular person was saying they have a large kind of spread apart team. Any tips for that person? Yes,
we recommend that our clients use one spreadsheet, and one spreadsheet creates the UTM parameters. So it's got all the calculations in there. So you just put your landing page, and then people can add their channel or their campaign or their keyword they're targeting, but everyone's got to use it, external resources, internal, across departments. And then we make sure at all times everything's always lowercase. We always use hyphens, never underscores. We don't even use spaces for most of our clients, because one little space will ruin your data, and then all of a sudden you have to export everything and do find and replace to clean it up. So we don't like doing any of the cleanup. So we are very strict at the beginning of a campaign in the planning process to make sure everyone's on the same page, using the same spreadsheet. And we usually build out most of them to begin with for we have the digital marketing manager usually do it, build out, okay, here's all the UTMs for Google AdWords. Here's all the UTMs for organic search. We use them for organic as well, and for paid social, et cetera. So one spreadsheet, one source of truth.
Yeah, right. And then there's a, you can take that spreadsheet. Once you have a good working spreadsheet, then you have something that you can really use to optimize going forward.
Yes, and it also acts as your historical grounding, because, if you only run a campaign once a season, you want to look back and say, what was that we called it again? How did we divide this up and segment it? So it is very nice from a historical perspective as well to have it documented.
And on that same historical and reporting, Brian, one question came in. Is there reporting available? You showed some a great example there tied to Michelle's. Is there reporting available? You don't have to go into the details. I know we're running up on into this, but is there reporting available?
Yeah, for every single rule that's built in Moxie, we will then not only track the rate of invitation, but we'll track the rate of engagement, and we'll even track the rate of conversion. So when a transaction is completed after someone works with one of your engagements, we will track the conversion rate as well as the number of conversions and engagements. So yes, you can measure the effectiveness instantly inside of Moxie.
Great. And probably the last question, because I know we're running up, I guess it depends on how long it takes to answer this question, Brian, but Jim had said the example you showed was specifically around retail. Is there a financial services use case for this technology? And then I'd love to kind of maybe hear, if we have time, from Michelle on the campaigns for financial services, if she has an idea, just an example.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I think financial services do some similar marketing in terms of driving and originating traffic. So I think the exact same technique applies when you're getting someone to respond either from a social or from an email campaign. But I think the important thing to remember when it comes to financial services, and I think this goes for other things, other industries as well, is that most of those signups or the decisions to engage may take place over multiple sessions. So you won't have to just worry about grabbing somebody the first visit. You also want to have your engagements ready to say, hey, welcome back. Would you like to pick up where you left off? Things like that, like a mortgage application or, a insurance quoting process that takes some amount of, you have to go and get and prepare materials and information. Your campaign, you don't want to have just a one and done. You might want to be able to welcome people back after they've started and initiated, but maybe not completed as well, some kind of sign up. And we can support that with Moxie's ability to recommend anonymous visitor repeat visits.
Michelle, anything to add where you've seen it work for financial services, this idea of message match? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and what Brian said is dead on. With financial services, we often see, that acquisition time period. Maybe it's 4 visits, maybe it's 5 visits. And the kicker is it's usually across devices, too. So we're not just talking desktop. We're talking maybe they started on a phone, went to desktop. So that tracking is really important, and making sure that message is consistent no matter what device they're on. So absolutely, Brian.
Wonderful. Well, thanks to Brian and Michelle for joining us today, and thanks for those in attendance. Here on your screen, you can see contact information for both Moxie and the Tressimer Group. Either one of us would love to hear from you. And, of course, you can respond to any of the emails that you would have received about this event, and we can get you to the right person at either organization. And, as always, thank you for everyone's participation, and have a nice day.